Hey, it's Ken here. I'm an immigrant. Did you know that? I am an immigrant. I'm an American immigrant living in the United Kingdom and have been for a long time. When I met my future wife, Suzanne, we were both living in the USA. She got a job here. And after a couple years, I wanted to be a little closer to her. What we didn't want to do was get married just so that I could get a visa. At the time, there was something called the Highly Skilled Migrant Program, which I applied to. Back then, you had to make a case that your skill set was so astoundingly unique and incredible that the future of Great Britain hinged upon you getting the right to stay in the UK. And I applied for this, and by some miracle, I got it. The application itself was about 200 pages. I had to dig out every bit of documentation of every performance I'd ever given, every review I'd ever gotten, et cetera, et cetera. Dozens of letters of support. And I had to prove that I had some ridiculous amount of money sitting in my bank account just in case. In fact, I had to borrow that, but that's what happens. So I was able to move over here, and in due course, we did in fact get married. And so at some point, I applied for a spousal visa, and I got it. And the way it works here is you can apply for such a visa, but it's time limited. And at some point, then you have to apply for something called indefinite leave to remain. I mean, you got to credit the British that, having come up with the language of English, they can make it so confusing as to come up with a status called leave to remain. But I needed to leave to remain. I needed leave to remain. And this process was just about as arduous as the original highly skilled migrant program, in addition to, proving that I'd been a resident in good standing and how many days I'd been in this country, all of that, that we still had a ridiculous amount of money just sitting in a bank account, which of course we borrowed. We had to also, prove that we were married, et cetera, et cetera. In the end, I went to submit my application, and the caseworker rejected it. Turns out that they had sent me an old and outdated form. And so no visa, no leave to remain, no right to remain. So I kicked up a fuss, and they said, well, given that it's our mistake, we'll let you reapply. I said, oh, that's very, very kind of you. Thank you. My problem is that I'm going to America for work, and at the moment, I'm not allowed to come back because I don't have leave to remain. So they wrote me a letter to present at customs on my return, saying that I was in the midst of a review of my immigration status, and that they were to give me a, 60 or 90-day admission to the country on my return. And so I went to the United States, I did my work, I came back, I showed my letter, got a little passport stamp, got the new form, filled it all out again, went back to the passport office, and I was rejected again. And you know why I was rejected? So I was refused. It turns out that the lady at Heathrow had put the wrong stamp in my passport. They had given me an extension, but it was a non-renewable, non-changeable, non-transferable extension. In other words, it barred me from doing the very thing I was here to do, which is to apply for leave to remain. So I was understandably concerned at this point. My wife, Suzanne, was pregnant with our second child. Our first child was just a year old. It was a terrifying prospect. And at the end of the day, all they could do, even though it was clearly documented that it was entirely not my fault at both stages, all I could do was leave the country and apply for re-entry. Leave the country and apply for re-entry. So I had no choice. I had to go back to America. I had to fill out a whole new set of applications, a portfolio, again, of 250 pages, everything you can possibly imagine documenting for something like this. We had to borrow money again to top up the old bank account so we looked legit. And I had to fly on my own nickel from Seattle, where I was working, to Chicago, where I was able to get an appointment to go plead my case. I was terrified. I was terrified. And in the end, I got a really nice guy. The appointment only lasted about 10 minutes. And here I am, 15 years later, still living in this country, still an immigrant. But boy, if I learned one thing about immigration from that experience is you can play by the rules, and they can play by the rules, and you can still lose. You can still lose because there's no underpinning in immigration law that speaks to human rights, that speaks to families, that speaks to love, that speaks to communities. I can't imagine what the Mexican and Latino American community is going through in America right now, but I know what I went through as a relatively privileged Caucasian guy. It was terrifying. Everything I'd invested in, my family, my work, everything, my home, was all so fragile. It could be taken away forever because someone put the wrong stamp in my passport. When I hear these people, pundits and politicians, talking about, well, you got to play by the rules if they want to come to our country. Fuck those people. I played by the rules over and over and over again. And I only just barely made it back into this country by the skin of my teeth. And if it had gone badly in Chicago, there would have been nothing I could do, and I couldn't have come back, even as a tourist, until enough time had passed that they no longer saw me as an immigration risk. So I just wanted to say that. I went on a little rant today about immigration policy and how bad the Obama administration was about it. I'm a left-leaning kind of guy, but, the Starmer administration here in Britain, the Obama administration, pre-Trump, record on immigration, family rights, all of that has been terrible. And it just opens the doors for the real bigots and xenophobes to be able to run completely unchecked because no one dares stand up to them. No one dares to make the argument against the people who say, well, they just got to play from the rules if they want to come to our country. It's obscene. It is, because it's always been a game. It was a game when they tried to keep the Irish out of America. It was a game when they tried to kick the Chinese out of America. And it's a game now with everyone from Latin America being sent out of the country. It's a dark, cynical, vicious, unfair, bullshit game. Don't think of it any other way. It only just recently occurred to me that maybe this experience of mine is why I took such an interest in the experience of the Chinese migrant workers who built the American Railroad, the subject of my new album, Silent Spike. This is a tale as old as time. And as long as we think that those people are over there are a threat to what I've got over here, we're always going to treat them as strangers instead of as friends. And, we forget that when you send someone back, you're breaking up a family, you're breaking up a friendship, you're breaking up a community. And the toll that takes, not just on the person who has to go, but on everyone around them, is horrific. The toll it would have taken on me and my family if I'd been unable to re-enter this country, I can't even imagine. And I've seen it many, many times, not just, with all the xenophobia around Brexit and people coming from Africa and the Middle East, but people who are, again, playing by the rules, supposed to be here, even invited here. I had a great friend who was one of the best pianists I've ever worked with. He came here as a highly recruited, prodigiously gifted young piano student. He won competition after competition while he was here. He was a YCAT artist. It's like the top young artist management company that's really supposed to identify the stars of the future. And when it came time for him to get his permanent visa, he failed and he had to move back to his home country. And all that decade and a half of his life making connections, getting to know orchestras and presenters and agents and conductors, all went right down the toilet, even though he'd been playing by the rules, even though he was one of the best around, maybe because he was one of the best around. So don't for a second think that this is an honest game. The deck is stacked. It always has been. And if we really want a better world, we have to start thinking about the right to live around the people that you love and to follow your dreams is a human right. And if you want people to stay in their country and not come to yours, then you got to work hard to make sure that their country is a place where it's safe to live and where you can look forward to a future with your family that you want to have. All right, so that's what I wanted to say today. Love you all.
Gather the ghosts and bones, the last ship sails for home. Open the graves, move all the stones. It is time at last to go home. Time at last to go